Close your eyes. Picture a Viking. You see it, don't you? The long beard, the fur-lined tunic, the heavy axe, maybe a round shield. And of course, the helmet, the iconic, terrifying, two-horned helmet. It's an image that's been branded into our collective mind. It's on sports logos, in cartoons, in movies, in video games. It's the visual shorthand for an entire age of people. What if I told you it's a complete fantasy? What if I told you that the single most famous thing about the Vikings is a lie? I don't just mean it's rare, I mean there is not one single shred of evidence that any Viking ever wore a horned helmet into battle. Not one. So if they didn't wear them, where did that image come from? How did we all agree on a fact that isn't true? I got curious, really curious, because this isn't just a simple mistake. It's a mystery about how history gets written and rewritten, and sometimes just plain invented. The story of the horned helmet isn't a story about the Viking Age. It's a story about US. When you start digging for the truth, the first place you have to look is the ground. Archaeology doesn't lie. And we found a lot of Viking stuff. We found their ships buried in the earth. We found their swords, their jewelry, their axes, their skeletons. We found their settlements from the fjords of Norway all the way to North America. So, have we found their helmets? Yes, but they're incredibly rare. Think about it. Iron was valuable. A good helmet was probably passed down, or melted down, or reforged, or it just rusted away over 1,000 years. But we do have one. Just one. One single, complete, undisputed helmet from the entire Viking Age. It was found in 1943 at a burial site in Gjermundbu, Norway, and it is terrifying. It's a Spangenhelm made of iron plates riveted together. It has a rounded cap and this haunting spectacle guard that protects the eyes and nose. It looks like a skull. It's practical, it's efficient, it's clearly made for one purpose, war. And it has no horns. There are fragments of other helmets too. Similar designs, all practical, all hornless. Okay, you might be thinking, maybe they were made of leather or wood and they just rotted away. It's possible, but then we look at the other primary source, their own art. The Vikings carved their stories into wood, into stone, into metal. They depicted warriors. They depicted their gods. No, horns. We look at the sagas, their written histories. They talk about battles. They describe kings and heroes. They mention helmets. They never ever mention horns. The one place we do see a figure with horns is on the Oseberg tapestry. But it's a priest or a figure in a religious ceremony, not a warrior. And even that is debated. So the people who were actually there, the Vikings themselves, and the people they fought, like the Anglo-Saxons who wrote detailed accounts of these terrifying raiders, none of them ever mention the single most distinctive piece of equipment we associate with them. That's not just a lack of evidence, that's conclusive silence. This is where the story gets strange, because people did wear horned helmets in Scandinavia. I found them. They exist. You can go see them in a museum, but they're from the Nordic Bronze Age. We're talking about helmets like the Vexø helmets found in Denmark. They are beautiful. They're intricate. They have these huge curving horns, probably styled after a bull. They are also from somewhere around 900 BC, the Viking Age. That starts around 800 AD. That is a time gap of almost 1,700 years. Saying these Bronze Age helmets are Viking is like finding a Roman legionary's helmet in Italy and calling it a World War II helmet. They are completely unrelated peoples, separated by an unimaginable chasm of time. These older helmets were almost certainly ceremonial. They were religious artifacts, not battle gear. They tell us nothing about Vikings, so the trail goes cold. The Vikings didn't wear them. Their ancestors who did wear them lived nearly 2 millennia earlier. For hundreds of years after the Viking Age ended, nobody pictured them with horns. When artists in the 17th and 18th centuries drew Old Norsemen, they drew them in fantasy armor, often based on Roman descriptions. Still, no horns. So, what happened? Where did the lie begin? It turns out the horned helmet wasn't dug up from the ground. It was invented. It was created for the stage. We have to travel forward in time to the 19th century. This was the age of Romanticism. All across Europe, nations were digging into their past, looking for epic, heroic, pure origin stories. The French had Charlemagne, the British had King Arthur, and Germany, well, Germany was complicated. But they, along with Scandinavian countries, rediscovered the old Norse and Germanic myths, the Sagas, the gods, Odin, Thor, and the Vikings. They weren't looking for historical accuracy. They were looking for drama, for passion, for a national epic. And in 1876, they got one. A German composer, Richard Wagner, premiered his masterpiece, Der Ring der Nibelungen, The Ring Cycle. It was a colossal 4-part opera based on Norse and Germanic mythology, and it needed costumes. Enter Emil Doepler. He was the costume designer, and he had a problem. How do you make these mythic gods and heroes look barbaric, primal, and ancient to a 19th century audience? He sketched. He looked at old Roman descriptions of barbarians who wore horns and animal pelts. He looked at drawings of those Bronze Age ceremonial helmets, and he decided to combine them. He put horns on the helmets of his Viking and Germanic characters. It was pure fantasy. It was theater. It was designed to look savage and dramatic from the back row of an opera house. And it was a sensation. The opera was a massive cultural event. And that image, the horned helmet, it was powerful. It was sticky. Suddenly, painters in Sweden and Germany started painting their historical Viking scenes with Doepler's opera costumes. The most famous was probably the Swedish painter Gustav Malmström. His illustrations for a new edition of the Frithiof's Saga were full of horned helmets. And just like that, the lie was born. It looked so good, so right, that it is picked up by illustrators, and then children's book authors, and then textbooks. Within a few decades, fiction had completely replaced fact. The image had become so powerful, it didn't matter that it was wrong. The 20th century sealed the deal. When you need a quick, easy visual to say, Viking, what do you use? You use the horns. It started with cartoons like Hagar the Horrible. It became the logo for the Minnesota Vikings NFL team. It was in Looney Tunes. It was in every B-movie and fantasy novel. We, the audience, became so used to it that when a movie tries to be accurate, people often think it looks wrong. We've ended up in a strange place, where the real history feels fake and the opera costume feels real. But why does it even matter? It's a helmet. It's a long time ago. Who cares? I think it matters because it obscures the real story. When you see a horned helmet, you're seeing a caricature. You're seeing a one-dimensional cartoon barbarian. When you look at the real helmet, the Gjermundbu helmet, you see something else. You see an engineer. You see a practical, intelligent, and dangerous person. Think about it. From a tactical perspective, why is a horned helmet a terrible idea? Because a helmet is meant to deflect blows. Horns. Catch them. They give your enemy a perfect handle to grab, to twist, to break your neck, or pull you off balance. It is, in every practical sense, one of the stupidest things you could possibly attach to battle armor. The real Vikings were smart enough to know that. They were farmers, traders, explorers, and poets. And yes, they were also brutal, efficient raiders. They were successful because they were practical, not because they were opera singers. The horned helmet tells you a story about what the 19th century wanted the Vikings to be. The Gjermundbu helmet tells you the story of who they were. The myth is a fantasy. It's a great piece of costume design. But the reality of a simple, functional iron helmet pulled from a 1,000-year-old grave in Norway, that, to me, is a much better story.